B or Algebra 1 students. This is 5.1. This is going to be part 3 of your guys' video. Our problem 3 is finding slope using points. So last video you guys learned how to do it from a graph, and that was using the triangle method. This one, we don't have a graph. We are just given points. So we have a slope formula. Slope formula, again, the variable that means slope is m, and it is rise over run. And our formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You're probably wondering what these guys are. These guys are subscripts. Subscripts meaning all it means is the order. Okay? Subscripts, think about a submarine. They're subscripts. Subscripts are underneath. They're on the bottom right hand of numbers, or numbers, variables, really anything. And all that means is the order. It's, if I were to have you guys line up in a line, I could say that it's student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4. And I could give you guys names on that. I could say it's Bob, Joe, Susie, or Sue, and Jane. And all that says is, hey, Bob is student 1, Joe is student 2, Susie is student 3, Jane is student 4, and they're going to line up in that order. Okay? All it is giving the same type of quantity or same type of object, a placement. Okay? Because these are all students. But I know that Bob goes first because he's student 1. Joe goes first because he's student 2. Does that make sense? Or goes next because he's student 2. Does that make sense? Okay. If it doesn't, let me know. This by no means has any effect on the value. Like, it doesn't change the value of it. All right? I'm not changing Bob. This just says that Bob is first. Okay? I'm not changing Joe. Just says that Joe is first, or Joe is second, and Sue is third. Nothing is happening to them besides putting them in order of, in their line. Okay? So, if I have the order pair, -1, 0, and 3, -2, and I'm asked to find the slope, the very first thing I'm going to do is to label my points. So I'm going to say that this is x1, y1. Notice that this is point 1, okay? x2, y2. Notice that the 2's of the superscripts are in the same order pair because this is point 2. That is all that this superscript is saying. This is point 1, this is point 2. So I'm starting here, I'm going here. All right? Looking at this, my formula is m, which means slope, y2, or equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then, if you've labeled your points, it comes down to plugging it in. It comes down to evaluating it. So we have -2. So my -2 is going to go in for y2. My 0 is going to go in for y1. My 3 is going to go in for x2. My -1 is going to go in for x1. So we have -2 minus 0 over 3 minus -1. Now, this is where a lot of students make mistakes because they forget the subtraction rule. They forget that 3 minus -1 is the exact same thing as saying 3 plus 1. Because remember, the subtraction rule means keep, change, or tick-tock. Tick-tock. Some of you guys may have learned it that way. A lot of you guys may have learned it keep, change. Okay, so my first number stays the same. My subtraction turns to addition. My number on the right-hand side changes to its opposite. And the opposite of -1 is +1. A lot of kids will forget this step right here. All right, and that's where I see a lot of errors. And anything -0 is going to be itself, right? I mean, we don't really have such a thing as a -0. So it's going to be itself on this. So negative 2 minus 0 is negative 2. 3 plus 4, or 3 plus 1 equals 4. Now, again, if you were to write this down as your guys' homework assignment, I would give you partial credit, because negative 2 over 4 is not in simplest form. The simplest form is negative 1 over 2. So this would be the better answer. Okay, so again, if you were to write this down, I'll give you partial credit. If you were to write this down, I'll give you full credit, because this is the simplest form of this. Okay, what if I said, hey, look, I don't want this to be x1 and y1. I want it to be x2 and y2. I don't want this to be x2 and y2. I want it to be x1 and y1. Is my value going to change? Do you think it's going to change? Think about it when we were doing the graph and the triangles. We were drawing the graph, or we had the graph on there, and we were drawing triangles on it. Did it matter which point we started with? No, it didn't. It did not matter which point we started with at all. So do you think it's going to matter if I label this as x2, y2, and this as x1, y1, as opposed to doing it this way up here? No, it's not. It's actually the exact same concept, except we don't have a graph. We're just flipping our order. We're just flipping our order pairs. So again, I would use our slope formula, which is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Plug in my variables. 0 goes into y2. Negative 2 goes into y1. Negative 1 goes into x2. 3 goes into x1. And again, it comes down to knowing your subtraction rules. If you do not apply the subtraction rule to this, you would come up with a different answer. But you have got to remember to apply the subtraction rule when it comes to these. If you don't remember that, you're going to have issues. So if I can, embed into your mind subtraction rule, that's my biggest thing on this. If you can apply the subtraction rule to this, you'll be fine. So my subtraction will tell me keep, change, or tick-tock. So I have 0 plus 2. And down here I have negative 1, keep, change my subtraction to addition. This becomes negative 3, because we say keep, change. This was a positive 3 originally, and now it's a negative 3. Well, 0 plus 2 is 2. Negative 1 plus negative 3 is negative 4. Again, this is, the exact same thing, except it's not reduced. So if you were to give me this, I would take off partial points for it, because this is our simplified form as negative 1 over 2. It does not matter where the negative sign is. Negative 1 over 2 is the exact same thing as saying 1 over negative 2. All that means is the directions. So go ahead. Let's do another one. If I have negative 8, and 8, 4, the very first thing you're going to do is label. So you're going to label first. I'm really big on this, because if you label first, then you're going to be able to stay organized. Okay? You're less likely to make errors if you label. All right? Labeling things, it will help you out in the long run. Okay, the second thing I need to realize is that this is my slope formula. M, meaning slope, equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then what's my next step? It's to evaluate, which really means plug in, right? Plug it in. It was like an air freshener commercial back in my day. Okay, this is when those things became really known for it. So you plug it in. So we have y2, which is 4, minus, because we're talking about the change. Change means minus negative 8, because that's y1, over x2, which is 8, minus x1. Again, since this is subtraction, we need to apply the subtraction rule. Subtraction rule again means keep, change, change, right? Or tick-tock, however you are taught in grade school. So we have, this becomes 4 plus positive 8, because keep, change, change. Same thing over here, keep, change, change. So this becomes 8 plus 8. So now we can simplify. Well, 4 plus 8 is 12. 8 plus 8 is 16. Again, if you were to give me this, I would give you partial credit because this is the better answer. This is the reduced form. All right? Not saying that this is wrong, because it's not. They're equivalent. It's just not the simplest form. And when we are doing things, we are looking for the simplest form. So, again, let's do one more problem together, and then I'll give you guys a couple problems to do on your own. I have 7, negative 20, 1, negative 3. The very first thing I do is I'm going to label. This is the very first thing I do. Does it matter? How do you guys remember? Does it matter if this was x2, y2, or x1, y1? Does it matter? No, it doesn't. I just get in the habit, and I'm going to be very honest with you. My habit is this. My first point is my first point. My second point is my second point. That is my habit. That just comes natural to me. This is something that I have just done over and over again, and it's just, I like to be consistent with things. So I'm consistently putting my first point as x1, y1. My second point is x2, y2. Again, the formula is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then the next thing I do is I evaluate. Okay, so the next thing I do is I evaluate. I plug in what we know. So we have negative 3, which is y2, minus y1. So that's negative 20 over x2, which is 1, minus 7, which is x1. Okay, again, this is, subtraction, so we got to apply the subtraction rule. And I made a mistake here, didn't I? So this is negative 7. So this should be a negative 6. Okay, I was jumping the gun. So we would have came up with, using tick-tock and our keep, change, change, negative 3 plus negative, plus 20, because of keep, change, change, and 1 plus negative 7. Again, negative 3 plus 20 is going to give me 17. 1 plus negative 7 is going to give me negative 6. This is in simplest form, so you're good on that one. Okay, so go ahead and try out this one. Go ahead and try out the order pair 5, 7, and 11, negative 2. So go ahead and pause the video and try that one out. Okay, assuming you pause the video, you should have came up with 9 over 4. Again, you guys can see the work that I'm expecting. I'm expecting all of this. If you do not have all of this, I'm not giving you full points. So we have, again, labeling our points. If I would have done that, I would have had x1, y1, x2, y2, and I would have plugged it in. Negative 2 minus 7 over 11 minus 15. Remember, tick-tock or keep, change, change. That would have given me a plus negative 7 and a plus negative 15. Therefore, I have negative 9 over negative 4. Again, if you were to put this on here, I would give you partial credit because that is not in simplest form. 9 over 4 is simplest form. Okay, so go ahead and try out this video. We have negative 5, 11, or try out this video. Try out this problem. We have negative 5, 11, and 0, negative 3. Try out that one and see what you can do with that. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and try this one out. Okay, assuming you pause the video, you should have came out with negative 14 over 5. And again, the very first thing you need to do is what? Label your points. x1, y1, x2, y2. And then plug them in. So you should have came up with -3 minus 11, 0 minus -5. And again, using the subtraction rule, you would have came up with positive or plus -11, and then 0 plus 5, because keep, change, change. So we have -14 over 5. This is in simplest form. I do not want you guys to change these to mixed numbers. Do not change these to mixed numbers. When we're talking about slope, leave them as improper fractions. You'll thank me later when it comes to graphing. Okay, so our slope on here is -14 over 5. That concludes part 3 of our notes.